Good evening and welcome to the December 9th, 2024 special meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Joe Steiner and I chair the Zoning Board. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this special meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here at City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a public judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page and also broadcast on Summit's governmental channel, which is Comcast Channel 34 and Verizon Channel 30. A transcript of the meeting is also being taken utilizing the video and audio, so we need all speakers to come to the microphones in the front of the room and use them, please. Please note that the fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. The city does have an assisted listening system to assist the hearing impaired. And if anyone needs that hearing assistance, please obtain the system here at the dais and return it thereafter. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Chairman Steiner?
Here.
Vice Chairman Loiketz?
Here.
Mr. Yuko?
Here.
Mr. Nelson?
Here.
Ms. Zahn is excused. Mr. Curran is expected but not yet present. Mr. Malay is excused. Ms. Toth?
Here.
Ms. Chifo? Here. Mr. Feskins?
Here.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you. Andy Ball, sitting on my right, is the zoning board's attorney. He advises board members on matters of law and is the key interface with the applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Stephanie Sulios is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. She works with applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Ms. Sulios also does not vote on the applications. Hopefully, we will have both of our experts here shortly. Tonight, we do have Ed Snikes from Burgess Associates, our board planner, and we are anticipating having Marie Raffi from Collier Engineering here. They are seated at, or will be seated, both of them hopefully, at the table to the right of the board, the public's left, and again, they do not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved, and before we enter executive session to vote on an application, you will be advised how many votes are required. Each case will begin with the applicant's attorney giving an overview of the application process to date and the variances that are required. We then hear from any additional expert witnesses that they may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. Board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals have completed their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about the application. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing, and please be careful how you phrase your questions. They should not be preceded with a statement about the case, but should be a direct question to the witness. Also, before you ask your questions, please clearly state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address. It's important for our court reporter to be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. After all the witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak, and at that time you can express your opinion, positive or negative, on about this application. The public hearing is then closed and we enter into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in that discussion. Tonight, we have two cases, both of which have been started, and we are almost to the end of one, and then we will go to the other. So we will begin with the Beacon Hill Club. And there are a number of people who are recusing themselves. Tom, you go. And our Vice Chairman, Scott. And one other, right? He's not here yet, so he's not here yet. And again, we are flying without one of our experts, and hopefully she will get here during that, and we will mention that. So we're ready to turn it over to
All right, thank you.
Beacon Hill Club.
Hillary Alls from Dempsey Ch, representing the applicant Beacon Hill Club, 250 Boulevard Avenue, Block 2203, Lot 1. First, I'd like to thank the board for their time tonight and for listening to this application over the last few months. Tonight, I'd like to focus on what is proposed by this application and the relief that's being requested. This application proposes to update, modernize, and improve the functionality of the carriage house, which has been described by the applicant and experts as outdated and in need of repair. Improve and update Pat's house, which is an existing non-conforming accessory structure, and make modifications to the upper and lower parking areas, which will result in the addition of on-street parking spaces, ADA compliant spaces, and EV space, and improved on-site circulation. The club further proposes the replacement of existing non-conforming site lighting with compliant lighting that will produce no off-site spillage and be managed by automatic timers, improve ADA accessibility throughout the site, improve pedestrian circulation, and the installation of a substantial landscaping plan, together with providing indoor storage for existing equipment currently stored outdoors, which will create a significantly improved aesthetic from Brantwood Drive. With regard to the relief requested, Beacon Hill Club is requesting a lot coverage variance for 0.65%. That's 2,775 square feet on a site that's over 425,587 square feet, where the structures existing on site are dispersed over both the upper and lower campus, together with the topography and the existing proposed landscaping, make it virtually impossible to perceive the additional coverage proposed from any one spot on the ground. The applicant is also proposing stormwater management that will result in capturing more than the required stormwater runoff generated by the additional coverage. Next, the club is seeking a variance for steep slope disturbance for 2,709 square feet, or 2.12% of the steep slope area on site. The proposal is designed to meet the intent and purpose of the steep slope ordinance, as testified to during the presentation by the applicant's civil engineering expert. The testimony confirmed that the steep slopes being disturbed have no ecological value. The disturbance will not cause excessive erosion or other unstable conditions. There will be no degradation of resources, and as previously stated, the stormwater management proposed is in excess of what is required. The club is adding off-street parking with ADA compliant spaces and an EV space. Beacon Hill Club is asking for a variance for 9 spaces, which relate to additional space used for storage, maintenance, and existing employees and members, and for improved accessibility, none of which generates increased parking demand or trip generation, as testified to by the applicant's traffic engineer. The applicant's traffic engineering expert, qualified by the board, testified that this proposal will improve every single condition relating to off-street parking, site circulation, and accessibility without question under all applicable standards. Finally, Beacon Hill Club seeks minor increases to an existing non-conforming accessory structure by the expansion of the second floor and an additional 8.5 feet in height and 55 square feet in ground floor area. The peaked roof of Pat's house contributes to the additional height. The peaked roof is aesthetically pleasing, architecturally consistent with the other buildings on site, and a preferable and favored design over a flat roof as reflected in Summit's design guidelines. As was described in the testimony, the expansion to Pat's house is not designed to increase spectators. There will be the same number of spectators that have been in the past. What the second-story expansion and improvements to Pat's house will do is provide a better viewing experience, especially when weather conditions in the winter result in the glass around the rink fogging up, making it virtually impossible to see what's happening on the ice from ground level. Currently, when this fogging condition occurs, spectators have two options. They can use the old spiral staircase, which is only wide enough for one person on the stairs at a time, and stand on the existing small and narrow platform on the second floor of Pat's house. Or they can climb the metal bleachers in icy, wet, slippery conditions and stand on the top row and look down to see over the glass. Neither of these are desirable options for many reasons, including safety. Pat's house, as proposed, will provide a better vantage point both on the ground floor with the removal of the obstructions from the existing windows and from the second floor when viewing the rink is not possible from the first floor due to certain weather conditions. These minor increases to Pat's house will be difficult to perceive from off-site because its location interior to the site, the topography of the site, the proposed landscape buffer, and the indirect views from Brantwood Drive. The nearest neighbors sit much higher than this structure, which make the second story and additional height difficult to perceive off-site, and the addition will be shielded by the proposed landscaping from Brantwood Drive. Just to note, the neighbors that sit up high on Hobart Avenue and Beacon Road have not come to any of the neighborhood meetings to express any concerns and have in fact expressed their support of the application to Mr. Pascal, who's here tonight and can testify to that. Variance requests should be granted if an applicant can demonstrate the proofs necessary to meet the statutory requirements. It is submitted that Beacon Hill Club has met that burden of proof. Beacon Hill Club has been a part of this neighborhood and existed at this site for 70 years. Private club use is a permitted conditional use, and the site continues to be appropriate for the use and the improvements proposed. Stormwater management is designed to manage any increase in runoff generated by the additional coverage. The proposal is designed to allow the applicant to better serve the mission of the club and not intended to increase membership or increase trip generation or parking demand. The existing structures and topography of the site create practical difficulty and undue hardship on the applicant. Certain areas of the club and the lower campus are difficult to access for those members who have mobility issues or for families with young children. In order to provide accessibility, it is necessary to construct an addition in the front entry of the carriage house to provide enough space for an elevator and access area, and to expand the pool patio area for a seamless and direct connection with the restrooms, locker rooms, and dining area, resulting in increased lot coverage. In order to provide sufficient space for maintenance equipment and storage equipment currently being kept outdoors, which is created unsightly views for neighbors, and with the limited space on site due to the topography, the only alternative is to construct an addition to the carriage house. The overall design and result of the proposal will continue to bring the club and the amenities that are offered into current custom and vogue with other private clubs in the area and will improve service and functionality to the members. The pedestrian and traffic circulation improvements, the addition of off-street parking spaces, the lighting improvements, and accessibility improvements all enhance public safety and promote the general welfare. The proposal provides for sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of recreational uses in order to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. The proposal will provide safety from fire, flood, panic, and other natural man-made disasters by the installation of backup generators and upgraded mechanical equipment. This equipment is also more energy efficient, quieter, and more environmentally friendly than the existing equipment. The improvements proposed are aesthetically pleasing, and together with the significant landscape screening proposed, will provide an aesthetic improvement over existing conditions and create a desirable visual environment while maintaining adequate light, air, and open space. The improvements will also preserve and enhance the existing character of the neighborhood. In In addition to the above, the applicant's planning expert testified to all of the purposes of zoning that this application promotes, as well as the goals and objectives of the master plan and reexamination reports, which in the interest of time I will not reiterate, as the testimony speaks for itself. The acoustical engineering report confirms that Beacon Hill Club is in compliance with applicable noise regulations for daytime hours as defined in the code, and the club has committed to continued compliance with the noise ordinance regulations. Compliance with sound levels established by state code suggests that the impact to surrounding neighbors is not substantial. There are, however, impacts that will be substantial to the neighbors as a result of this application. Those impacts will be a substantial benefit and a direct and significant improvement over existing conditions. First, as I've stated, there will be stormwater management to capture the additional runoff generated by the additional coverage. Second, there will be an improvement of all aspects of site circulation and off-street parking. Third, the elimination of existing off-site light spillage by the installation of compliant shielded site lighting operating on automatic timers. And most significantly, the aesthetics of the lower campus and the views and streetscape from Brantwood Drive will be drastically improved by the relocation of unsightly equipment to indoor storage areas and the proposed landscaping, which includes upwards of 120 new trees and shrubs that will result in substantial screening and shielding of the improvements on the club's property. In addition to that, Beacon Hill Club has worked with the surrounding neighbors, listened to their feedback, and as a result of those meetings and discussions, proactively offered conditions of approval to confirm their ongoing commitment to being a good neighbor. Therefore, based on the foregoing and all of the testimony provided, I would ask the board to vote in favor of the application and grant the variances requested, subject to the conditions that have been agreed upon by the applicant.
Thank you for bringing us, as I understand it, up to date where we are. Do you have any intention of adding any additional witnesses at this point? Because I know you indicated that he was
Sure. So Pascal,
in present, and you have been sworn before.
Yes.
Yes.
But it's up to you if you plan to call him.
If you just wanted to tell the board if you've had any conversations with the neighbors on Hobart or Beacon and what.
Yes, so Pascal Lalonde, Lalonde. We have had conversations with the neighbors that are on Hobart Avenue as it connects with Beacon Road. And then as you go down, there's one house, that family, they're on the executive committee at Beacon Hill. They're very supportive of the project. And then the next house on Beacon Road, on the side that faces Beacon Hill, they have 3 kids that play hockey at Beacon. They're Beacon Hill members. They're very supportive. That's why they haven't been here. They offered to come. We didn't think we needed them, but they support the plan. Those are the only 2 houses I could see that would have a view towards the Pat's house.
Thank you. That's it.
Any questions for this, further questions for this witness?
Have you, yes, have you talked to the neighbors on, was it Brantwood, I guess?
We've talked to them many times over the months, yes.
Okay, and I mean, I don't know if that's the neighbors that were here, but are they?
Yeah, they're on Brentwood.
Okay, and they are
I mean, I think we heard their testimony at the last meeting, that they support the conditions of approval. We did it with them, in consultation with them, and I think what was important to them is the idea of enforcement, so that while they trust this board and how we've been doing things now, they want to know that in 5, 6, 7 years, they have a mechanism to do that. I think that was addressed at the last meeting for them.
Any other questions for this witness?
Just out of curiosity, you guys are putting up all these trees because of the project. I know for years there's been a problem with the neighbors on Brantwood. And maybe you don't know the answer to this, but I'm just gonna throw it out there anyway. Why wasn't screening done 6 years ago or 10 years ago when there was a complaint? Maybe you can't answer this question, and if you can't, I get it.
Yeah,
I think-
mean, I don't know that you haven't been on these.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, because I remember one time there was a front-end loader that Beacon Hill Club painted camouflage colors to appease the neighbors?
I think what's important is that.
Is more what's going on now.
And I
Yeah,
will
we're finally
say-
resolving the
And
problem.
that
Yeah.
there's the commitment to work with
Yep.
them, and we propose the conditions.
In the conditions of approval is a commitment to replace any damaged or dying trees
Yeah.
that.
I just
are
had to
part
ask
of
the question.
screening.
I
Yeah.
should have asked it before, but I apologize, but thank you.
Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, and because we did reopen testimony, I think it would be, appropriate to ask if anybody from the public has anything to ask of this witness. And then lastly, to give the public an opportunity to make any comments on this case that they wish to, if they haven't already done so, or even if they have. I see, and the record should show that no one has indicated a desire to make a public statement at this time. So at this point, we will, I'm assuming that your opening statement served as your closing statement?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, so at this point, we will ask our attorney to provide us with the conditions of approval, should we go that way, and also the number of votes required.
Certainly. So I have a few conditions. First, our usual compliance with those conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. Secondly, I have a bit of an all-encompassing one that we are going to be incorporating those conditions noted in the applicant's Exhibit A1, the proposed conditions of approval. I won't go through every single one in detail, but those do address landscaping, skating hours, and ice maintenance hours and procedures as submitted. I have another condition. The applicant, I do want to actually confirm this with Ms. Alds. The detail in the plans that were to reflect the proposed installation of wheel stops in the upper campus parking lot, was that provided since the October hearing, or is that still an item that needs to be finalized?
I don't remember, but if it has
Okay.
not been provided, we'll provide it.
That is another condition, that those details will be updated. And then fourth and finally, as indicated in the last meeting, that a copy of this resolution shall be recorded with the Union County Clerk to become a matter of public record, and therefore the neighbors would be aware of those specific conditions, including the hours of operation, if there's any concerns at some point in the future.
We agree on all of this.
As for number of votes, 5 votes are required since a D variance is involved.
And you do understand that we only have 6 voting members at this point. At this point,
And just to
we
note,
would
we do-
open.
Sorry, Mr. Steiner, we do want to proceed with deliberations at this
Yes, the
stage.
deliberations, yes.
Okay. Who would like to start?
I just want to make note that the neighbors, I guess, like I said, Brentwood, they were here for all those other hearings, and had questions, but that they're, just for the record, that they're not here for any comments. I wish that, I hope that they're not here because they didn't feel a need to be here, and it wasn't just scheduling, since it's been going on.
And they did provide their comments at the last hearing.
This is the second time for the public comments, and they did comment the first time.
They commented?
Yes.
Yes.
Not just, okay.
I'll open it up.
Go ahead.
A lot of work went into this plan. I think there's a lot of, most of it's good, as far as I'm concerned. A lot, it meets a lot of the requirement. I mean, it meets a lot of the neighbors' demands on Brentwood. I think that screening is a big thing. And the reason why I asked that question earlier that I asked, I know it's been barren for a long time, so I'm glad we finally, you guys have finally come to a good conclusion to that. It does make those neighbors, it does provide a better screening for the neighbors, so I can definitely support this application moving forward. I think there's a lot of good going into this site.
I'll step in.
Please.
The requests on the surface, particularly as a percentage, all are very modest. I think the biggest thing here is the amount of thought and effort to improve and create positives for the community was very thoughtful. It was a very well presented, addressing a lot of the concerns. In addition to offsetting on the negative variances by increasing the parking versus what is today, the stormwater management improvement, the material improvement to the landscaping, but also I think the biggest thing as a father of three, the material improvements you're making to the existing facilities to better serve both, well, I have 3 girls, so you're serving that community very strongly, and the ADA compliance. It's a material improvement. So for that, I would be in support.
Allison, Ms. Shiva?
I got another tour this weekend from a member, and it's very much in need of improvement. So I totally get why you're here. Seems like it probably would have been long overdue. So I am in support of it.
Yeah, I feel a little obligated. I was not here at the last meeting. I did have some questions that at the time, I did not believe were answered, specifically regarding Pat's house and the combination of the affected neighbors supporting this obligation, and then, of course, our planner was satisfied with the applicant's planner's presentation, has satisfied my concerns, and I can support this application.
I'm good.
You good? Looking at this, the size of this, and the notes I put on here, the deep slope, 2,700 square feet, sometimes we think is a big number, but it's only 2.12%. What did we say? Large number, small percentage? It's a big property. The Zamboni issue, we spend a lot of time on to make sure that people's ears aren't affected. And it looks as if we've got the commitment to do that. I will tell you, I do have some concerns that 9 parking spaces isn't going to solve any problems anywhere. But there's enough parking consideration that hopefully they'll talk to the right people at the right times and make sure that parking in the neighborhood doesn't become a real problem. Because if it does, people are going to go look at that resolution and come finding you, and they should. The roof on Pat's house does bother me a little bit, but not enough to say that this shouldn't be carried forward. They are handling drainage. That's important to not just to their property, but to the neighborhood properties as well. Adding trees, adding all the things that they're doing, I would certainly entertain a motion to approve this application.
Before we get to a motion, just because a D variance is triggered here by the impervious coverage increase. I've heard some commentary about the stormwater benefits here, landscaping benefits. Is it the board's opinion that the site can accommodate the proposed increase in impervious coverage over the existing condition?
With the landscaping and the stormwater management, yes, the applicant has more than satisfied those concerns. Thank you for reminding us.
I would add to that, the circulation for ADA compliance is a benefit that we should very much consider as well, and that's creating that impervious surface. So I support that.
I agree with the drainage in the park.
Thank you.
So I would look for a motion.
So moved?
Second.
May we have a roll call?
Sure.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Chifo?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Yes.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Okay. The resolution doesn't come for about a month, and with our schedule right now, I might be a little longer.
That's okay. Thank you.
We will move to 479 Morris Avenue, if they would come forward and set up. And we would ask our Vice Chair and Mr. Hugo to rejoin us. Scott?
It's good to be back.
Yes, thank you. Do we have any idea what we're going to do without our engineer?
That was ginormous.
Mr. Chairman, what if we ask the applicants to just review the engineer's letter
If we will.
and say how they
We'll do
comply?
that in its detail, but it's, every once in a while she comes up with an absolute
Absolutely.
question that helps.
There's no doubt.
Okay. Yes, sir, we're ready. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, for the record, Larry Cowley on behalf of the applicant, 479 Morris LLC. Thank you for having us again tonight, Mr. Chairman and members. Briefly, and hearing the discussion before in the record as to your engineer's absence, if you recall the initial hearing, and I'll quickly give you a summary of what we concluded with, where we left off, and what we're going to do tonight. We went through all of the civil engineering testimony, direct cross-examination, public, there was no public. So we went through it, including the report. There has not been any site plan changes that are further deviations or downward adjusted deltas, if you will, from the prior plan. In fact, we've seen a number of improvements. Thankful in large part to the board's commentary recommendations from the hearing we had on November 19th. We went home, we did some homework. Our project architect, our project engineer, took the plans back out and looked at where we could maybe improve, enhance, or otherwise modify in reaction to some of the board's thoughts and concerns that we had at the last meeting. That said, Mr. Chairman, we'll certainly go through the engineer's report. Our project engineer is here with us again, even though we concluded the testimony. We can recall Mr. Ferranti as needed. But tonight, our plan and our witness deck is relatively limited and lean. So our project architect, Mr. Forbes, who's sitting next to me now, and then we have our project planner, Paul Rickey, to go through the variance relief. At that point, we think we'll likely be able to conclude this case. There's not a lot of moving parts to it. There's not a lot of relief to it either. And we think some of the enhancements and improvements we made might be appreciated by the board as we move forward tonight. With that, just a brief summary of where we left off and what we did. We talked about this project and this property as originally being 2 lots. The property owner took ownership of the property. There's a structure, a 3-family structure, sort of pinched to one side of the property. There's a very obvious void, a gap, if you will, on the side of that structure where another lot could be developed again. A structure could be developed. And what's being proposed is a compliant structure in many respects. Density, floor area ratio, building height, building envelope, structure setback, parking, all of that complies. What brings us to the Board of Adjustment, it's always nice to see you folks, but what brings us here, requiring a supermajority vote, which is, a little bit different than the planning board, is a little nuanced. It's the fact that we're not activating the first floor of the structure with the commercial use. What we're proposing is residential on all 3 floors, all 3 levels. That is creating the D relief here, the use variance relief component to it here as well. So that's what brings us to this board. There's a couple of very limited bulk variances that are being required. Happily, none of which are these sticking point ones that usually you see coverage. It's a parking lot percentage of the property in the rear. And there's a buffer between park property lines and varied uses. Interestingly, we're the lower intensity use, but without that buffer, we require bulk relief. So it's pretty limited on the relief, notwithstanding the fact that we do have D, and you'll hear from our planner shortly. This is a property that we think is well suited and well sited for this use that's otherwise permitted in the zone and is like several other along this corridor on Morris. With that, Mr. Chairman, I won't belabor the point of my proffer. I think the board understands this project well. You had very good thoughts and comments at the last meeting. What I'd like to do now is introduce our project architect. We'll swear in Mr. Forbes, we'll qualify him, and then we'll walk through his floor and elevation plans. We'll probably mark one exhibit, council, with Mr. Forbes' testimony, and then we'll probably introduce with Mr. Forbes, just to keep things moving forward, the updated site plan exhibit where we're able to sort of prepare these enhancements following that November meeting for the board. We'll mark that as well, if Mr. Forbes gets to that, and then we'll go from there.
Any questions for the attorney?
I have one question. The existing structure, is you said it was 3-family. What is the other existing structure? Is that a 2-family, 3-family, ground floor retail?
The one existing structure is a 3-family. There is no retail.
What about the other, both sides of the property?
There is no other
The
structure
neighbors.
right now. It's proposed.
The neighboring
Our
properties?
planner will get into the abutting
Okay.
uses.
Thank you.
It's varied. There are structures that are all residential, some have commercial, some do not.
Okay.
Okay? But our planner will get into the streetscape.
Okay. Other questions for the attorney? We'll proceed with
Thank
your
you, sir.
first witness, please.
Swear in?
Yep. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
It's Rob Forbes, Forbes.
Thank you, and I believe you've appeared before us relatively recently, is that
Yes,
correct?
probably 3 months ago, I believe.
Okay, any changes to your credentials since the last time you were here?
No, sir.
License in New Jersey still in good standing?
Yep.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept him once again?
Let's accept him once again and proceed.
Thank you. So, Rob, you heard my profit to the board. I know you were at the initial public hearing, and you worked very closely with our project engineer and the applicant for, I want to say, a year at least now, to evolve this design and get to where we are now. If you wouldn't mind, Rob, take the board through this nice structure you've designed. We can go around the skin, the floor plan, any piece you like, and then we can start talking about the enhancements to the existing structure that would tag along with this project.
Great, sure. So our client, he and Betts, originally approached me a little more than a year ago. It's almost 3 years ago now. We've spent a lot of time kind of studying this site, understanding what we think is the smartest way to develop this site. When I first kind of met Ian on site, it was kind of very excited to see potential for this site. It feels like it needs to be activated. It looks a little tired. It's kind of a break in the rhythm of the streetscape, and almost we want to construct almost that missing note in that streetscape, right? So, as we started to study this, we kind of wanted to bring a new building with luxury units onto the site, and then also to update the existing facade and make a more harmonious design to the site as a whole, or to the two sites as a whole. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the plans that you have. Should I take that microphone over here?
Please.
Yeah.
You guys hear me?
No.
Good?
Push the button.
Yeah.
Green, that should do it.
How about now?
Can you tap it?
It's on, right? It's
It's not on very loud, but it's on.
Is there a volume there? Okay, so if I start with sheet BOA 1, that's the elevations. So what we've done is we've designed this structure kind of compatible with some of the other buildings in the neighborhood. It's kind of a Dutch colonial. The existing house on the other lot looks to be built around the 1920s, 1930s. It is visible on the 20 Sanborn maps. So we're kind of pulling from that kind of time period with some of the roof design and the scale of the building. You can see, I'll come back to some more, I'll give you the materials on my side. We've got kind of new hardy plank siding. There's a front porch that I'll walk through on the floor plans with you, but essentially we have a ground floor unit, a second floor unit, and a third floor unit. The only access to the, I'm going to just go to the floor plan, actually, it's easier to explain that. So if I go to sheet BOA 2, which you have, basically, as these people come into the site, they park behind the structure, as you heard from the site engineer's testimony. We constructed a rear lobby that all of the units can kind of come into and walk up a stair tower. There's space for an elevator. Again, we're trying to design a luxury building here. So there's some luxury amenities. There's a little rear entry porch. We come in, all of the units are 2-bedroom units. They all are right around 1,000 square feet inside the units themselves, once you get rid of the kind of common spaces or the lobby spaces. So you kind of come in, there's kind of a hall bathroom, 2 bedrooms. One of the bedrooms has an ensuite, an open space. This lower unit also has access to the front porch. That's the only unit that accesses from the front and from the back. The other units above only have access from the rear, and that again is trying to keep, as they kind of move into the site, they get into the back of the site, they enter their buildings. They don't have to move back to the front. apartment building. This building, as noted here, is going to be fire suppression. I know that was a comment last hearing. It's always been planned to be fire suppression. It does have a 1-hour rated wall, as we've set the building just a little bit more than 3 feet off the property line. It's actually 3.25 feet off the property line, so that wall is required to be rated. We are in a zero lot line development area, so we are not asking for any setback variances. The building can be that close, and it's kind of compatible with the other buildings that are built in kind of up and down that corridor and in that zone. It's about 24 feet wide, also about the same width as the other kind of 2 to the left and 2 to the right. Again, we're trying to complete that series of buildings, letting them look harmonious and in rhythm. As I move to the second floor, you'll see kind of a little bit of a repeat on the second floor, although it does flip. The plan kind of flips. As you come up and you enter in, you hit your common space. You have a hall bathroom that shares access to the 1 bedroom and another bedroom en suite. And then as we come up to the 3rd floor, the elevator can actually dump into the kind of penthouse or top floor unit. There is a balcony in the back of these to give them a little outdoor space once they're in the unit to kind of step out. So if we kind of go back. And that's the general kind of floor plan. And then as you look at the facades again, you can see the front elevation. Here is the front entry for the lower unit. All double hung windows, kind of a 2-over-2 pattern. In the rear, you can see this is kind of the stair tower and that elevator kind of tower element. The AC compressors are going to be on the roof, kind of in this area right here to keep them out of sight. These are the balconies for those upper units. We can see that side elevation. This is the driveway side elevation, the left side elevation. Again, you can see how as we come, we kind of got this 1-story element, this front porch, and almost like this enclosed sunroom element. As you move down the facade, we've kind of pushed the little element out on the 2nd floor just to break the plane as we move down the driveway. Here you can see the stair tower going up. Everything is really organized. We're really careful as we design this building. Here is the other side, the right side elevation. This is the side that's kind of just over 3 feet from the right side property line. We've done an analysis of the amount of windows because there's limitations on what percentage of windows you can have once you start to move that close to the property line. Everything is in conformance. And then if you can mark my 1 exhibit.
You'd be up to 83 now, Rob. You can identify it and mark it with today's date. Once you identify it, please.
So this is a colored rendering of the streetscape. I'm going to mark it A3. Today's date, 12/9. And what we've done is we had the renderer take kind of from across the street. We wanted to render the existing building with some facade improvements, which I'll kind of walk you through. We had them render our new building and also render the adjacent residential building to the right of it, just to show how it kind of blends into the streetscape. It is less, it's not as tall as the existing building and kind of falling down into that building. And you can see the driveway in between. You can see how we broke the facade as you move down that plane. The gambrel roof really helps to drop the building down into this too. The existing building, what we're proposing to do, really is a cleanup, kind of. We're going to paint the upper 2 floors a new color.
Just reference the existing, the building on the far left we're talking about.
Far left, this is the existing structure to remain. And then we're going to paint the lower floor a different color. We want to almost break up the mass of that building a little bit because it is kind of a big structure. Our building actually helped to hide that big kind of 3-story structure you see from as you come up Morris Avenue. So we're gonna kind of almost create this two-tone look. So the lower floor, we're gonna paint like a white, the brick is like a white. We're gonna clean up this second floor porch, put a new railing on it. Really almost looks like a temporary structure that's there right now. So we're really gonna clean up this facade, then use kind of color to blend these two together, as you kind of can see there. Then you want me to introduce the exhibit that we have done for.
Please.
So-
A4, and this is what we were discussing earlier, which is sort of our best effort to incorporate and implement the takeaways from the board for our November public hearing.
So I'm gonna mark this as A4. And the date is 12/9. So after the last meeting, I've been kind of working with John Ferranti in his office to try to figure out how we could kind of address some of the concerns we were hearing. And one of, I think, the best takeaways from that meeting was your comments related to the pedestrian traffic and the vehicular traffic, and how could we separate those two things? Because we did have that about 13.75-foot driveway, which still remains, but then we were had these kind of substandard sidewalks on each side of the aisle. So what we've done is we have enough room on either side of each building to push the sidewalks to the outside of the structures. So someone could come, if they were walking, right, they could come onto the sidewalk, walk around to get to their car. The existing building has access to all three units from the front. So if somebody was walking, they could walk into the front porch, go up to any of their units. They would not have to walk up and down the aisle. On this side, we did the same. We pushed it to the outside. Again, the first floor unit can walk right in, but the second upper two units, right, don't have access from the front. They only have access from this rear new lobby, right? So if they came in to park, they could go right in. But now also, because we have this sidewalk, they can kind of walk around. That kind of frees up some air, right, and cleans up, I think, a condition along this center vehicle area. And we've got kind of about a 2-foot planting bed on each side of the aisle, and you can kind of come in. The other thing that we added, or John added, was we added the site triangles to show that we are in conformance with the site triangles as you pull out. He also added a stop sign, and he added a stop bar kind of on the, like a painting stripe on the ground there. In terms of garbage, we took the garbage that was here. The garbage on the existing structure is below the deck, and it's kind of a good spot for it. We can kind of screen it with some lattice a little bit better. The garbage that we were proposing behind our new kind of back entry, we've moved to the back portion of the lot. That allows us to free up this entry here with this sidewalk to the side, and we'll have some little enclosure for that. The garbage currently, the way that it works on site is the garbage men come, they walk up the aisle and they pull the cans to the front. Our client Ian actually said that at certain points the tenants were pulling them to the front, but the town actually, they got in trouble for doing that. They want the garbage and kind of walk up the staff of the driveway and pull the garbage cans to the front. So they would still be able to do all that. So we think the garbage should be handled with no problem. We've got 2 cans for each unit. That's really the changes that were done with this exhibit. We also added some turnaround studies, right? So if somebody were to come in and needed to turn around, they can turn around. There's enough space. There's 29 feet between, even if the lot was full, someone could turn around. And I think when we designed this building, we really were conscious to make sure we were complying to all the coverages, all setbacks, lot coverage, FAR, everything is in conformance. So we really don't feel like we're overdeveloped in this lot. I think it's a really great proposal from how to kind of develop this site.
You talked about the refuse enclosure area, Rob. Just briefly, we had a discussion with the applicant, prospectively looking forward, assuming this project were approved and this were built and implemented. If and when there were ever an issue in the field where refuse collection needs to be enhanced, the applicant is amenable to a private hauler to supplement the city collection, is that right?
That's correct, that was the conversation we had, yes.
Can I ask you a question about that? Or is it not time yet?
Certainly, sure. Yeah.
So, I know we talked about not taking the garbage to the front, but recyclables have to go to the front. So is there an area for that when that happens? Recyclables have to be taken to the curb, which kind of contradicts you can't take garbage to the street, because now you gotta take recyclables, because the city picks up in the rear, but recyclables do not.
So I did not talk to you about that.
Well, there's an existing condition now with the existing structure, so we would mimic that for the other lot, I assume?
That's correct.
And could you familiarize us with that?
Well, there's, you talked to me about that, is there existing recycling, they know that, must be.
I can't hear what you're saying.
Well, he's speaking with me.
Oh, okay.
He's just talking to me.
I honestly don't know the answer to this question.
We'll ask the applicant how it's managed now,
Sure.
but it would be an identical scenario, however it happens now, because there is a three-family there on the property now, and recycling is
Mhm.
handled, so it would be the same scenario for the sister lot that we're proposing. But we'll confirm for you by the time our next witness is on.
And I know it's a minor thing, but it is a.
No, but it's a pragmatic thing, so it matters. No, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
I have a question. I feel you covered this in your testimony, but maybe I missed it. So where will the garbage cans be kept in the back? Is there a
So there's
structure?
the existing garbage cans for the existing building are kept below there's kind of like a rear deck that serves for access to all of the units that they kind of, it's almost like a second means of egress that they have. They can kind of step out onto a deck and they can access the deck from the rear, access the units from the rear. There's space underneath that deck that's almost full height, where those current cans are kind of situated, and that they were gonna remain there. It seems to be working fine, it's at site. It could be screened a little bit better. We would like to maintain or propose some lattice screening underneath the deck in the air, so it's not so visible to the new tenants. That's where it would be.
Quick question, how wide are the sidewalks gonna be?
They're gonna be 3 feet wide. Yep, each one will be 3 feet wide.
Standard?
Yeah.
Like a double stroller that we put in?
Depends on the stroller, but standard is 3 feet.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you now.
It's the same width as the front door,
Okay.
so the stroller can get through the door.
But the nice thing is, just before we design this is, you can go from your car right into the unit in the rear. You don't have to interface that drive if you don't want to. But there is that room there, just if you do want to go into that drive.
So you move the sidewalks to the outside of the property line. Is there going to be testimony about any kind of separation between your property line and the neighbor, fencing or anything like that? Or what's the existing condition? And the second is, are you keeping that drive aisle the exact same dimensions as previous? No width increase?
So, to answer that, originally when we submitted this, it was a 12-foot wide aisle. We've increased the aisle to 13.75 feet after some engineering discussion with your engineer. We've left it the same since the previous hearing. There was testimony at the last hearing about the existing fencing, I believe, along the right side. John left to testify.
Yeah, we'll recall our project engineer, call out those dimensions for you. But there is no relief sought, but we will call out structure setback, whatever you're looking for. But there is no variance sought for any accessory or principal structure setback to abutting property lines.
It's not what my question was going for. My question was, how are you impacting the neighbor by throwing your sidewalk there versus having it down the drive aisle? Like,
I
was
think it's inherently not an impact because it's code compliant, but our engineer will call out those dimensions for you.
Thank you.
And there is a fence there, and it's adjacent to their side. They have a current, you can see their sidewalk, and we're kind of mimicking.
We're mirroring that scenario that exists
We
on
think
the
it's a
property.
Okay.
Well, following up on the theme of impact on that neighbor to the right, it's been a while since I've been to the site, and I didn't focus on the fenestration on that side of the neighbor, but how is this structure affecting the light coming into the neighboring building?
So, I mean, I
Thank
think
you.
we've kind of designed.
I got the photo.
I was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So again, we're gonna be about 7 feet apart.
Okay.
We could be up as close as the lot line is.
Mhm.
Right, so we've
Right.
pulled away
Okay.
to address some concerns with air and light for our building and
Mhm.
air and light for that.
Yeah.
So we think we're compatible with the neighborhood, and
Mhm.
compatible with the zoning
Mhm.
that's set up for this district. So we have, it's not like we're building right up against them, we kind of stepped away as much as we can try.
Thank you.
Question, what would you guess or estimate the distance is between your neighbor and then their neighbor?
So we do have some distances on this board. We looked at the because we wanted to compare like our drive aisle, right, to what some of the other conditions were. So to the left. of-
Microphone?
Sorry. So we do have some of these dimensions here, but we wanted to compare with the drive aisle we were proposing to some of the other drive aisles that are on site, that the planner is gonna kind of walk you through a little bit more. But if I go up to the left, again, we're proposing 18.3 feet between buildings, let's say, right, between the masses. To the left of us, they only have 15.2 feet as the existing condition between vertical buildings, so again, we are wider than that. To the right of that, between those two residential buildings that have a very similar situation to what we're proposing, they only have 14.7 feet between buildings. So again, we are proposing more width, which will provide better light, better air. I'll let the planner get into that.
Other questions?
Is your attorney done questioning you? I don't be interrupted. I apologize.
No,
Okay.
please.
So one of the things that concerns me is I don't see any comments from the fire chief, the fire official. So I know we have the 1 hour rated wall and the so when you say the building's fully sprinkled, is that in the units itself or is that just the common areas?
No, the whole building, in the units themselves.
And is the sprinkler system providing a trade-off for a second means of egress?
So,
Is that your
yes,
intention?
For a single exit structure, we're required to have this building is required to be sprinkled, correct?
And you have automatic elevator recall and fire alarm, so it goes to the floor below the fire?
We are not asking for any deviation from the code here,
We
right? The board couldn't grant We it
have
anyway.
to comply. No, yeah, we couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm always concerned when there isn't a second means of egress, even if it is sprinklers.
Mhm.
Because, when it happens the day they're working on the sprinkler system, there's soldering pipes and boom, there it goes.
And again, we have the
You have egress.
balcony access and egress windows, right? This building is designed.
So how would you propose a person in a penthouse get out of the egress window when you can't conceivably put a ladder within 7 feet and have a proper climbing angle?
Well,
If
they
the parking
could,
lot's full, you can't
They
put a
would
ladder
fight
in
this
the back.
fire from Morris Avenue, right? They would,
Assuming they can reach that side of the building.
well, they have windows on the front of the building.
Again, assuming they can reach that side of the building. Yeah, okay, thanks.
But it's gonna comply to all these
Yeah,
buildings.
yeah, no, I get it.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Go
I
ahead.
have a question about parking. I know this was discussed before. So there's 6 spots per unit, right? And one of them's
Per building.
per building, I mean, yes. And one of them is electric vehicle, correct? Are they deeded spots? So is this one unit, does every unit get in 2 spots?
We're going to designate within the lease an allocation per unit, who gets what. So it's gonna be baked into the lease, a maximum number of spots. It's gonna total what's there. And that's it. The EV is a product of the state requirement.
Mhm.
So as we discussed, there's no EV spaces. They're allowed to be taken over by a gasoline fire vehicle. So that's the layout. It's conforming as far as count goes. We meet the requirement, and the requirement accounts for not just tenancy and occupancy, it accounts for visitor spaces as well. So we're showing 6 per building, and each lease is gonna have a maximum limitation on how many vehicles can be occupied. I mean, the reality is, you can't guarantee this, so it's got very little value, I'm about to say, but the size of these units that Mr. Forbes has designed, the likelihood of 2 vehicles per unit, it's Probably not likely, Rob, I would think. With two-bedroom units, I wouldn't think so. But either way, we can account for them all, assuming everybody has 2 vehicles. And the EVs usually a wash. You know, usually they're not utilized, they're tremendously underutilized, but the state requires them, they'll be there. And one day we may pivot to that model, you know.
And just so I'm clear, the only reason you don't need variances for floor area ratio, lot coverage, all that kind of stuff, is because this is a neighborhood business zone or business zone?
This is the business zone. This is the B zone.
So, and then the variance you're requiring is that you don't have a business on the first floor, which is really what the business zone is for.
Exactly right.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, I have one. You may have said it, but I maybe missed it. Is the sidewalk still going to be in the driveway? It's gone.
The sidewalk is removed from the driveway.
And the width of the sidewalk is what?
3 feet. 3 feet.
3 feet, and that's basically the space between the property line and the building.
So the existing building is set back 4.5 feet, so 3 feet, those would be about 1.5 foot of room. The new building is set back 3.25 feet, so it leaves us enough room to have a fence, the sidewalk, and then the building.
And again, there's no variance needed for any of that, what you just described, the fence, the sidewalk, right?
Fully conforming.
No,
I just-
but it's utilizing the space, which is giving space in the center for the driveway.
I just wanted to clarify, we've said this, but I want to make sure I'm 100% clear. You're only asking for a variance for the ground floor not being commercial.
That's what brings us to the Board of Adjustment. That's the D roof. There was ancillary bulk relief that I mentioned. Our planner will walk through that, our engineer did identify it. It's a buffer area setback in the rear. It's the percentage of parking area, but that's really it.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing relative to our structure, where it's placed, or any of the accessory improvements placed, nothing related to what we're building, effectively. That box is compliant, where it's supposed to be located.
Okay.
So, I guess the building to the west of, I guess it's the west of that, the older structure, that's a non-conforming use based on the zoning right now too, correct?
Because it doesn't have any commercial use. Exactly right. Yep. And then the only net change to that structure is, a little bit of lipstick and bells and whistles on the facade, improvements that will go along with this project.
Has there been any thought to sprinkling that building as part of the upgrade?
That has not been discussed to date, no.
Okay, any more questions? Any questions from our experts?
Thank you very much.
One of which is missing.
I just want to let the board finish first. Regarding the building that's being proposed, you do have storage space in the basement?
Yes.
Okay. And that will only be for the residents?
Yes, that is correct. If you look on the first 2, there's access from the lobby, the rear lobby level down to the lower level, which would have some mechanical space, and then a little bit of a storage space for each individual unit.
If you could just describe the building height measurement. It will comply?
Yeah, so the building height measurement, we have the mean grade listed here on the front elevation. Max height's allowed to be 42 feet. We're 2.76 feet under that for a total of 39.24 feet.
Okay. And you've also revised the roof area, or the attic space area, so that would comply with the requirements under the FAR standards?
Yes, we have removed any FAR from the attic level. We revised the roof design to make that work. At one point, we were walking up from the penthouse unit into a little loft space with access to a roof garden, which we didn't think was the right way to go after some discussion. So that's all been revised. There's no FAR, there's no attic, there's no walk-up attic.
You mentioned some detailing on the existing building, some improvements. I believe you mentioned railing improvements?
Yes.
Is that something that'll be a detail that'll be submitted to the board? for the record?
It can be as a condition if you would like, yes, but it's designed to be like an open iron rail, so it's not very visible, right, not very heavy, trying to just reduce the mass of this existing building as much as possible.
And that's on the second floor? or
That's on the
first floor?
second floor.
Okay, and then the first floor stays with the,
There's currently like, you'll see in the photos with the plan, there's currently almost like a solid wall
right, the
instead of a
brick wall,
railing.
right? That's gonna stay, is what I was trying to.
Yes, the brick wall on the first floor stays, but the second floor has like a solid wood framed wall instead of a railing. So we're trying to open the porch up visually.
Sure, understood. Any other changes to the upper floor, the third floor?
No, just paint.
Okay, so those are just the awnings that exist there now?
That's correct.
Okay. And, sorry, going back to that lower level, will you be painting that brick?
Yes.
Okay, so you're trying to tie it in with the rest of the building?
Yep.
Okay. As far as from an architectural perspective, what other features have you seen in the neighborhood that brings some of the features that you're proposing to?
Well, I think we see a lot of the residential buildings have front porches, right? So we're proposing this one-story front porch. Across the street, you'll see some of these gambrel roof designs that we're trying to now pull onto our side of the street to help with the rhythm up and down the facade. We've got double-hung windows, which you'll see on a lot of the units. Clapboard or hardy plank siding that we're proposing. So the materials, the asphalt roof. Those are some of.
So those features are tying together with the neighborhood?
Yes.
The reason why I bring that up is that we have design standards, not
Yes.
regulations. And so you
Yep.
take a look at the design standards.
Yes, we have, and I think we got a glowing report from the Historic Commission on that. Which I need to say when we actually get that, right? Yeah, so,
Look at them all the time, right?
they don't get them all the time, so
There you go.
I think we need to address that, or at least note it. So yeah, their review kind of, they were in favor of this design, continues the pattern of development, and complies with the DRO, right, the design standards.
Okay. And the changes that you just identified for the board this evening, they don't change the location of the building?
No,
They don't change the location of the driveway?
no,
Okay. Everything stays the same, you just adjusted the sidewalk to the opposite side?
that's correct.
On both sides of the building?
We
And so-
basically moved the green space that was on the sides of the building and pulled the green space into the interior.
Okay. And that sidewalk that would circulate around the building on the outside, at least for lot number 4, which is the lot to the east, that sidewalk would connect to the rear entrance of the building so that visitors can get to the upper floors?
That's correct.
It wraps around?
Yep, it wraps around and comes right into the entrance.
There was a fence with a gate there, has that been taken out now?
The gate is still there.
Okay, so the visitor would have to go through that gate in order to get to the entrance?
That's correct.
But you don't anticipate that being locked, of course?
No.
But that the garbage enclosure now has been moved to the back of the property, is it staying on lot 4? Or is it shared between lot
So
4?
right now, it's indicated as being shared.
Is that gonna be sized for both buildings at this point, or is that?
No, it's really just for this building, so it could be shifted just over onto our lot. It's probably smarter to just shift it onto our lot.
We considered bringing it all back there, Rob. We thought it might be too heavy with all the containers back there if we did it for both lots.
Yeah, we didn't want to do it for both lots, and we've got a good spot for the garbage for this lot.
And is there going to be a detail provided for that enclosure?
Sure.
Okay, so we can see whether or not it's screened and how it's screened. All right, you said you were gonna screen or provide some lattice screening for the garbage area for the existing building?
Yes.
And that all changes to the existing building will occur on all facades or just the front facade?
The painting will occur on all facades.
Okay, thank you, just wanted to clarify that for the record. Thank you. Good question.
Okay. Any questions from the public? I'm not sure if we have any public, but no questions from the public. You want to move on to your next witness?
Please, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Rob.
Could we take a 5-minute break while witnesses are shifting?
I'm sorry?
Could we
5-minute break.
break?
I just missed that.
5-minute break.
You want to take a 5-minute break now? That's what happens when you. Fine, we'll take it now.
Yeah, I know. I'm making sure you're gonna be glad to see
Okay.
the back
It's
of it.
approaching 9, so yeah.
Yeah.
We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 10 up. We are talking about 477, 479 Morris Avenue, and we'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So we're now going to our final witness in connection with this application, our project planner, Mr. Paul Rickey. Paul has been here before. He was before us on this board, actually, about a year ago on a garden apartment complex for a clubhouse. But nevertheless, we'll voir dire him as needed, and we'll make sure his qualifications are in order once he's sworn in.
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter, the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
It's Paul Rickey, R-I-C-C-I.
Thank you, and as stated, you appeared before us about a year ago, is that correct?
I have, and I continue to be a licensed professional planner. I've been licensed since the year 2000. My license is in good standing. I'm a planning consultant to 6 communities. I testify regularly in front of boards. I've been qualified in over 250 towns throughout the state. Been doing this for over 25 years.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept them back once again?
If you hear my education, I have a master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University, which I received in 1997.
I gather we will accept your credentials, because I don't see anybody jumping up and down right now, and we will turn you over to your attorney.
Thank you.
And I'm jumping up and down, they'll be asleep when he's done testifying, Mr. Chairman, so that's one way.
We would prefer that that not happen.
Can't guarantee that. I do have a fairly lengthy outline. I'll try to be on point and not be repetitive. I did prepare an exhibit, which I'd like to qualify. It consists of 4 sheets. The first 2 sheets are aerial photographs that were prepared in a geographic information system. The first sheet shows the subject property outlined in orange and the tax line base, and identifies the street names in the area. Really, one of the major distinctions in why I had sheet 1 is that as you move through the exhibit, you're going to see me identifying some block and lot numbers and the like. And sheet 1 clearly identifies those block and lot numbers, whereas on sheet 2, because of some of the text, some of that information gets lost. So when we get to sheets 3 and 4 that show photographs and identify block and lots, I don't identify the property address, but identify the block and lot so that someone can reference it back to that aerial, if you choose to do that.
Council, you okay with us marking this collectively as A5?
Yes.
Planning exhibit, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a 4-page exhibit deck prepared by Regional Planning. It's got a September 2024 date on there. 4 pages, and we'll mark it as A5 for the record.
Okay, and then the second aerial shows the zoning for the area, and then I labeled all the land uses in the area, as well as the nearby zoning districts. And then sheet 3 shows essentially pictures of the subject property and to some extent some of the surrounding properties. And then sheet number 4 shows surrounding properties in the area. And some of that was also to show how this is, we believe, to be consistent with the character of the area and what Mr. Forbes did in terms of copying the Dutch colonial architecture. You can see some of those Dutch colonial homes in the area. Again, I'm going to try not to be too long-winded, but you know, sometimes this is, my outline is somewhat lengthy, I have to admit, and I may have to rely on it a little bit more than I traditionally do for that reason. Again, we are in your B zone. As you heard from the previous witnesses, there are no specific requirements for lot area, lot width, and lot depth. However, there are requirements for building coverage, lot coverage, height, and floor area ratio. So you're really regulating by the amount of coverage and the amount of building area that's allowed under your zoning code. And we're in compliance with all of those requirements. Where there are no requirements, clearly we're in compliance. And for the requirements that exist, we comply. Regarding the existing land uses in the area, it's just to reference sheet number 2. Again, the subject property is outlined in orange in the somewhat center of the photograph. Morris Avenue is running through the center of the image. Starting from the upper left, you can see there's a great disparity in size and properties. And what you're largely going to see is on the larger properties, you tend to see commercial land use or in a traditional commercial retail or sense. And then on the smaller properties, you're going to notice they're essentially all residential. And again, you heard from Mr. Forbes that The subject property first developed approximately 100 years or so ago, around 1920. So this is an area that developed a long time ago. But starting in the upper left, on block 507, lot 7, you have the Volkswagen dealership there. And as we're moving just along Morris Avenue to the right, I label it as mixed use. There's a driving school on the ground floor. Then there's a residential use on the ground floor behind the driving school. And then there's 2 residential uses on upper floors. And then we have the subject building where we have the 3-family home. And here I'm showing the proposed subdivision line. Partially I'm showing that to show how the lot as proposed is substantially consistent with what you see in this immediate area. And then as we move further to the west, there's a 2-family home followed by a 3-family home, all on lots that are substantially similar in size, followed by an office. And then you can see just to the north of us in the R10 district, there's the school parking lot associated with the Oratory Prep School. And that's where the buffer design waiver that we're requesting is for the portion of the new lot that adjoins that school parking lot. And if anyone's been in that school parking lot, there's a difference in grade that occurs. That parking lot is lower, and then there's maybe 3 or so feet of wall space, and then that's followed by a 6-foot fence. So that parking lot and any type of headlight glare is already being captured by the fence and the wall that's in the parking lot follow towards our subject property. And again, I'll talk about this, but while we are seeking the buffer design waiver, we do have a 5-foot buffer. We just don't have the 25 feet that's required under your ordinance. And again, I'll touch upon this later. Here, we have a residential property in a business zone that's required to provide a buffer to a property that's not acting as a residential use in a residential zone. Traditionally, it's the more intensive use that is necessitating the need for a buffer. And traditionally, we don't buffer residential properties to residential properties because does not consist of an incompatible land use. And then as we move to the southern side of the street, all the way to the western portion of the exhibit, there's a Midas Auto Repair Shop, followed by a liquor store, a couple of offices, and there's an office I call it with office residential character because there's the appearance of a residential building. That's the Weichert building. And then we have on comparable size lots to the subject property, a 3-family home, a 3-family home, and then a 6-family home. And then as you move in the southerly direction, in the R5 district, those are single-family homes. And then again, we have the Infinity car dealership as we move in the lower portion of the eastern portion of the exhibit. And then we have some pictures just to show these conditions. Picture 1 is of the subject property. The existing building that's part of this application is on the left. And part of the purpose of the exhibit is to show that gap in the streetscape that was identified by Mr. Forbes as part of his testimony. Picture number 2 just shows the same iteration from the rear. You can see there's a good amount of green space and a good amount of separation between the backs of these buildings in the rear lot line. Picture number 3 shows that existing parking area that adjoins the lot to our right, looking from the street. And then finally, picture number 4 is looking generally in the westerly direction towards the existing building. Existing building, in my opinion, it's an older site. It really has some deferred maintenance. And there's a real opportunity here, I believe, as part of this application, to reinvest in that building and its facade and to improve it, like all older buildings tend to need over time. And then again, picture number 5 in the last page, we're showing the rear of the adjacent buildings at 475 and 473 Morris Avenue. And then the fronts of those buildings here, you can see the one on the right is a Dutch colonial. You can see some of the elements of the open porches discussed by Mr. Forbes as well. And then we cross over to the other side of the street at 468 Morris, where you see another Dutch Colonial, and then finally, the six-family home located at 462 Morris Avenue. Permitted uses in the B district include retail sales, except for drive-through facilities, offices, restaurants and other eating establishments, except drive-throughs are not permitted, financial institutions without a drive-through, residential uses above the first floor, theaters, personal service facilities, retail service facilities, dance schools and studios, health clubs, lodges and social clubs above the first floor, funeral parlors, institutional uses, instructional schools, automotive sales, private clubs, and adult daycare. So it's a fairly permissive zone. It also permits gasoline service stations, automotive repair, and houses of worship. Again, for the variances that we're requesting, it's the D1 use variance to allow the apartment on the first floor. There was discussion, Mr. Cowley, of the need for a D2 variance because the existing three-family home is non-conforming, and when you reduce the lot size of a non-conforming use, it's traditionally called out as an expansion of a non-conforming use under the Raspberry decision, but here, there is no lot size requirement, so we're, I guess, conservatively requesting that variance, and I'll provide justification nonetheless. And then we're seeking bulk variances to permit more than 30% of the parking stalls to be 8.5 feet in width by 18 feet in length. Those are slightly undersized. And to propose a 0-foot buffer along the proposed subdivision line between the proposed lots, because we have that common driveway that we're sharing that prevents the ability to provide that buffer. And then I had it as a design waiver under Article 14, Design and Performance Requirements from Section 3514.7B. It says a strip of land 20% of the average depth of the property, but not to exceed 50 feet, shall be planted and maintained as a landscape rear yard buffer if the rear yard abuts a residential zone or use. So we abut a residential zone, so we are seeking that design waiver. I think the board recognizes for a D1 use variance, we have to demonstrate that the use is particularly well suited for the use, that the variances can be granted without a substantial detriment to the public good, that's namely the surrounding property owners, without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of your zone plan, and also through an enhanced burden of proof to reconcile the omission of the use from the municipal master plan. It's my opinion that the subject property is particularly well suited for the use for the following reasons. We are located in your B district, which does allow for a full range of commercial uses and already residential uses on upper floors. Despite this not being a permitted use, I've shown that the surrounding neighborhood contains 3 other three-family homes, a 6-family home, a 2-family home, and a mixed-use building, the 5-star driving school, which also has 3 units, including a ground floor residential use behind the driving school. So I believe it's clear that the property surrounds similar development on both sides of the property and in this neighborhood. I think it's clear that a gap exists in the streetscape today, that it appears that a building is missing. We've already heard testimony that at one time an identical lot did exist, and this was an area that was platted for development, and over time somehow that lot became consolidated, but the original platting pattern for this area consisted of a lot that we're looking to recreate as part of this application. Again, this will result in the creation of a streetscape that is consistent with surrounding buildings. And here, while we are seeking the use variance, I mean, this is a use that is permitted in the zone at some form. It's just not permitted on the ground floor. As a planner, I know that New Jersey has a tremendous shortage of housing. New Jersey Future, I'm not sure if anyone knows that, but that's a public think tank in New Jersey that said that in July of 2022, that nationally we're millions of housing units short of meeting demand, and that the situation is proportionally worse in New Jersey. They also indicated that New Jersey's housing costs are among the highest in the country. The state ranks 7th in median home value and 4th in median rent, and that the state is losing younger households to other states, and evidence points to high housing costs as one of the reasons. To create more of the kinds of homes that younger households are looking for in neighborhoods they want to live in New Jersey, should consider revising the zoning and parking requirements that demonstrate what kind of housing gets built and where. And this is what New Jersey think tank has said. And I'm also going to discuss your master plan that has also additional information that supports this type of housing as well in appropriate locations. And they go on, and I don't want to sound too repetitive, but for younger New Jerseyans on the lower end of the income ladder, high home prices and rents can present a significant barrier to forming their own households and staying in New Jersey when they do move out on their own. And telling was New Jersey has the highest incidence among the 50 states of people ages 18 to 34 living with their parents. 45.4%, nearly half, was reported by New Jersey Future. And then from a need perspective, there is less demand for many of the permitted uses that are permitted in the zone. And here we have a site that's modest in size. It does not lend itself well for commercial land use, and particularly why you see all the other properties of this size in the zone that have almost essentially 100% residential, with the exception of the driving school, which occupies a very small square footage of the front portion of the building facing the street from the left. Meanwhile, the demand for apartments and workforce housing is strong. I believe there's a tremendous need in Summit and in the area for this type of housing. Today, housing is largely focused on new single-family housing, housing around transit, and low and moderate income housing that addresses town low and moderate income housing requirements. Who's left out in that mix? It's the everyday person in terms of workforce housing, which is defined as, by at least the Urban Land Institute, between 60 and 120% of the median family income. So as a planner, as a municipal planner, I know that this is the type of housing that's in strong demand and need for New Jersey's workforce. Creating a new three-family home in the area where such use is prevalent, I believe, is an opportunity to provide a more diverse supply of housing options in the city, in the area where it's particularly well suited. Creates opportunities for a graying population who want to stay in town, and young individuals looking to get started, stay in town, be close to friends, family, and work. I also mentioned that the location is directly adjacent to New Jersey Transit 70 bus, which provides convenient access to Newark Penn Station right at the doorstep here as well. So there are many residents that could benefit from this housing. Moreover, I believe there are other ancillary benefits associated with this application. It advances the community design guidelines through the inclusion of Dutch colonial architecture, which exists in the neighborhood. I know that the Historic Preservation Commission also supported at least the project from a design perspective. This project is consistent with the residential density found in the area, which ranges from 19.91 units per acre to 34.85 units per acre. And then there are some improvements that the engineer discussed in terms of stormwater management as well. To the extent that we do require the expansion of the non-conforming use variance, again, there are no minimum lot size requirements for the district. Accordingly, the lot size will remain in conformance with the zone. It's my opinion, as a planner, I think case law supports this, that it's the intent for non-conforming uses to become conforming over time. It's also my opinion is that when the board can come to a conclusion that that use is not gonna, it's highly unlikely to convert to a conforming use. I think the goal is to harmonize that use with the area to the maximum extent possible. And here we have a three-family home that's existed for over 100 years. I discussed the greater need for residential space than commercial space, and we have a structure that's designed as a residential structure. So it doesn't easily lend itself to a commercial use because it's a residential building, and it doesn't have the attributes that a commercial use is looking for with a minimal amount of parking, competing interests with buffer requirements in the city that would further take away the ability to provide parking at this location as well. Here, we also talking about the harmonization of the property. The architect discussed the proposed improvements to the existing building. Those improvements appear to be pretty significant to me in terms of dressing up the curb appeal of that building on really on all four building phases as part of this application. For these reasons, because of those improvements, under the Burbridge decision as well, aesthetic improvements or advancing the property to be more consistent with the City of Summit's design guidelines, promotes the general welfare, and advances the positive criteria for a D2 variance as well. Regarding the bulk variances, to permit more than 30% of the parking stalls to be 8.5 feet by 18 feet. I mean, some of this information was already testified by the site engineer. These are residential spaces that have that relatively low turnover. We believe that these smaller spaces work for a residential property. Here, we're balancing competitive needs, the needs to provide buffering, the needs to provide parking, and that if we can provide parking spaces that work for low turnover users where cars will fit in, and despite that, allow us to provide a little bit more space at the rear of the property for buffering, we believe that's a better zoning alternative in this context, and that the benefits of that outweigh the detriments. Regarding the 0-foot buffer along the proposed subdivision line, that variance is required to provide a shared driveway on the subject properties. The benefit of that shared driveway is that there's one less curb cut on Morris Avenue. There's less impervious coverage on the properties. And we believe this to be a better zoning alternative as well for a property that's just 75 feet wide, and one that is consistent in this area for similar properties. Again, we believe the benefits outweigh the detriments. Regarding the buffer waiver, the buffer requirements are required when a lot abuts a residential zone. And it's not that we're providing, as I said previously, no buffer. We're providing a 5-foot buffer, but not the 25 feet as required by your ordinance. And here we're required to buffer a residential use to a residential zone. I believe it was the intent of your zone plan that allows for many commercial uses to buffer commercial use to a residential zone. Here it's a little bit of the opposite that's occurring. We have a residential use solely in a business zone, and then we have, which is similar to what's nearby, and then a parking lot for the school behind us in the residential zone. So the goal of the buffering ordinance, and I want to read it in its entirety, number one is to shield vehicles and light from vehicles from adjoining properties, which is already being achieved, that I discussed on the adjoining property. And it also discusses under the purposes to buffer more intensive uses to less intensive uses. And that's not occurring here. So it's my opinion as a planner that the need for that 25-foot buffer does not exist in the context of this property. And not to say that, I mean, this is the condition of the adjoining properties. I'm not here to say, well, they don't have it, we don't want to do it as well. But in my examination of those properties, they don't provide a buffer, and they seem to be operating well without that buffer. And one of the things also for consideration is that the depth of these lots and how far the structures are from the adjoining zone line as well. I did review your 2000 and 2016 master plan. Your 2016 master plan in objective 1.02 discusses the ORC and B zones. It says assess ORC and B zones to ensure that they are meeting intended policy objectives. And it goes on to say, the business zones B are also in transitional locations. They provide for more intensive commercial use. For this reason, B zones that border single-family residential neighborhoods should be assessed to ensure the appropriate transitions are maintained. I just discussed that. In this context, I believe that is occurring. The key policy objectives are twofold for both zones, because before that, it talked about the office residential character zone. Promote reinvestment and reuse of buildings while maintaining scale that is appropriate for a transition zone. I think we showed that the scale of the buildings are consistent with the area as well. It goes on to say, currently it is unclear whether these zones are meeting either legislative objective. Some properties remain underutilized. I believe that's the case for the subject property. Even after subdivision, we still meet every zone requirement and with the construction of a new home. While some new development proposals do not maintain prevailing scale of the neighborhood. And I believe Mr. Forbes did an excellent job of showing how we are consistent with the scale of the neighborhood. And objective 4.01, promote the development of a variety of housing types. Your master plan says, provide a more diverse supply of housing at a range of price points can help retain and attract empty nesters interested in downsizing their dwelling, first-time home buyers interested in planting roots in the community, low and moderate income residents, and people employed in Summit who find it difficult to find appropriate housing in the community. So it's clearly an objective of your master plan to provide this type of housing. I think this is an excellent opportunity in a location where we would be providing this housing in an area where it already exists and is surrounded by similar housing. For these reasons, I believe this application supports several purposes of municipal land use law, because the site is particularly well suited and meets purpose A, because there's a need for this type of housing and meets purpose G, because we're making desirable visual improvements to the existing building, and we're providing a new home that's consistent with your design guidelines and endorsed by your Historic Preservation Commission. We meet purpose I, to promote desirable visual environment, and purpose M, to be the more efficient use of land here, where we're requesting some of those buffering variances, shared driveways, and the like. Regarding the negative criteria, I don't believe there'll be a substantial detriment to the public good. That's namely the surrounding property owners. In short, we know that the building, its size, its location, its scale, the amount of square footage, all conform to your zone plan. So we know that its location and its intensity is appropriate in that regard. Apartments are already anticipated on the site on upper floors. This project is less intense than many of the permitted uses that I've mentioned. The existing surface parking lot would be removed. That's along the frontage, and we would make this property more in conformity with its surroundings and to eliminate that gap in the streetscape that does exist. We know that there's sufficient utilities in the area. That's not an issue. And again, the rehabilitation of the existing building will improve its appearance, which is a benefit to the neighborhood. So collectively, the project will have a positive influence on the neighborhood. Regarding your zone plan, in addition to those 2000 master plan goals and objectives mentioned by your planner, and what I mentioned, again, in the 2016 master plan reexamination report, said maintain the prevailing character of neighborhoods, which is achieved. Provide a city that is welcoming to residents of all ages, races, ethnicities, abilities, and income ranges. And associated with that, increase housing options for young adults, empty nesters, and seniors. Promote the development of a variety of housing types. And it goes on to say, explore special conditional use permits or zoning changes that incentivize developing a wider range of unit mix. And again, I mentioned that we meet all the standards, your bulk standards for the zone, and we meet your Historic Preservation Commission's requirements. One of the things I wanted to mention as well is that regarding apartments on the ground floor, I think this is the crux of this case. And when you define a use, it prescribes a configuration of permitted uses within a permitted, it does not provide a prescription or configuration of permitted uses within a building type. Rather, the ordinance establishes conditions and standards for the location and operation of such a use. In this regard, the ordinance anticipates residential apartments on the property. It's my opinion that allowing the ground floor residential is more akin to a conditional use as it relates to how an already permitted use in the property is being delivered. I believe we've shown that the site can accommodate a ground floor use with no substantial detriments. And here, I think the key is that where we're proposing this is not in the heart of your downtown, where we would be taking a commercial ground floor use and replacing it with a residential land use. And this is an area where what we're proposing is already commonplace. So it would not be a substantial detriment to your zone plan in that regard. And again, overall, the application results in the improvement of the visual appearance and site aesthetics, creation of new high-quality housing, the creation of workforce housing, the elimination of that gap in the streetscape. So again, I believe that the use variance will provide an appropriate location for this use. Regarding the Medici criteria, I believe that the community need for the proposed use helps further support the Medici criteria for a use variance to specifically reconcile the omission of the use from the master plan. The reduced need for a commercial space supports that there have been changed circumstances since the preparation of the adoption of the last master plan element, and that the changed circumstance pertaining to the delivery of a needed use to provide housing for the community, which is supported in the master plan. That's my direct testimony. It's a little long-winded there, and,
No.
but I believe that it was needed.
Thank you, Paul. Chairman?
Questions from, you're up first.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you for your testimony. One of the critical things here is the use variance, like you had mentioned, and the use on the first floor. Could you address the intent of why the governing body had established to have commercial use on the lower floor? Why is that typically customary?
It's certainly customary to have a downtown-style use where you have in downtown Summit, where you want to have a high amount of pedestrian traffic, and you have interesting ground floor buildings where people want to shop, work, and play.
And you had touched on your testimony that there's a reduced need for that type of use. Do you have any statistics or any facts to back that up?
Well, in terms of, office, I didn't provide all details. We know generally in New Jersey, I don't have the exact figures, but within the last 6 months, I reviewed generally there's about 20% or so office space vacancy. I know as a community planner that in downtown districts and when I do redevelopment plans, I'm personally requiring less retail space as part of new mixed-use downtown projects, and we're even allowing them not having retail, but to retain a certain look, have amenity spaces in those locations, because what we're just hearing from the development community is that we can't fill those buildings. Part of some of that is a give back that developers will give a certain look on the ground floor, but there's less of a need for that type of land use today. And I think it's clear that the need for housing on the ground floor is substantial. And nationally, I've heard estimates of upwards of 5 million units are needed. And New Jersey Future supports that as well. And here, for me, as a planner, the key distinction here is that we are surrounded in an environment where this condition exists. So it's not like we're taking an area that functionally served as a small commercial downtown as a mixed-use environment and reverting that to something new. We're just trying to replicate what's already here. And I think it's a big distinction. If you asked me, would this project be appropriate in downtown Summit or areas that were juxtaposed between similar mixed-use buildings, I would have a different opinion.
Could you also talk about we also, under the variances, we have to look at whether or not it's a substantial impact. The board has to look at that, whether or not it's a substantial impact to the intent and purpose. So that intent for the lower floor being residential, but not being commercial. When you look at the entire property, both lots 4 and 5, and from that standpoint, does that represent, if someone was to redevelop that entire tract for commercial on the lower floor and residential, would that represent a substantial impact, in your opinion?
If it was developed fully as commercial, I would say it has potential for disruption of this neighborhood, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots. We are the middle 2 of those 5 lots that have similar scale and architecture and the like. Under your zone plan, you require a 25-foot rear yard buffer to a non-residential use. I don't see the ability for you to have some type of on-right development that you can park a commercial use unless it's very, very low intensity. I'm not sure how it's even possible to park a commercial use that has greater demand for parking, as well as, the need to truly have likely two-way access in and out, to have a very wide curb cut in an area that historically does not have that type of development. So I believe for this 5 set of properties will be more disruptive, whereas some of these larger properties in the area have a greater opportunity to provide that. So overall, the zone has the ability to largely meet its intent. We're talking about a small portion that is, I don't want to say highly irregular, but irregular in terms of the commercial properties in this area of the city.
You had talked about the access drive. I know that the discussions at the last meeting with the engineer talked about the width of that drive at 13.75 feet. I know you're a planner. I'm asking you from a planning standpoint, if you feel that represents an appropriate condition for the proposed, was it 12 parking spaces total? And the operations of that drive, will it cause any issue relative to the intensity of the use at that location in consideration of what's being proposed?
I'm trying to see if you might have to bring me back on point, because you asked several questions.
Right, there was sort of.
First with the driveway width, I can say, for example, within the last 6 months, I'm the board planner in Nutley, and the planning board approved a project on a driveway of very similar size, where it can be only one-way traffic. At that meeting, it was discussed that there would be signage installed indicating that the exiting vehicle had to yield to an oncoming vehicle. I moved, you can see my address, in Atlantic Highlands here. I historically lived in Clark. I lived in Westfield when I was a young planner in a 2-family in this exact environment on Central Avenue, if anyone knows that area, coming up from the Parkway. And also, I commonly went to Westfield for professional services, where I would visit dentists and doctors and the like that were commercial uses operating with greater intensity on a single driveway. When I was living in Westfield for 2 years with two-family homes, I can recall maybe once or twice in 2 years where I had to back out of that driveway because there was a conflict with an oncoming car coming in, because there's such low volume that traditionally occurs with these type of land uses. I'm not a traffic expert. Those are my experiences.
I understand. I thought I'd ask you a question from the standpoint of a planner. Bear with me a second. You had indicated that in the overall review of the design waiver that's being requested for the buffer, that you had 5 feet. That's being also reduced now as a result of moving the trash containers to the back area. So therefore, you wouldn't have 5 feet there. Does that change your perspective, or what would be your response to that issue?
When I visited the rear parking lot on Block 507, Lot 23, I mentioned that that parking lot is suppressed, and I parked my car this evening, so I had my lights facing within maybe 15 feet, and then I backed up the car to see how my lights may potentially penetrate into the residential property. And because there was maybe 3 to 4 feet of a course, a block course, a wall, and then a 6-foot fence, there's a very good separation that exists today from those two properties. And if you looked in my pictures, the distance from those residential homes to that lot, there's already a pretty substantial separation. So, and again, the other properties were performing well. I did not see us creating an incompatible land use with that property. And that property, I thought, was designed to address impacts towards us based on that submerged grade. So I did not see the need for the buffer.
Okay, but yet you're also, isn't there a fence that's also being proposed?
There is a 6-foot fence on the rear property line right now.
And is that on your property or in the neighboring property?
That I can't definitively answer. I would suspect that it's
It looks
it's
like
on the
it's-
neighboring property.
It's actually shown on the plan, I believe, on your property. So
Okay.
therefore, it is something that the applicant will maintain and provide as a buffer to adjacent properties?
If it's on our property, my engineer just advised me it's on the abutting neighbor's property. If it's on our property, we can lawfully maintain it, and we will.
It just seems like it is located. Okay. Just getting on to your other points of your testimony, just for clarification for the board. You had indicated that you had looked at the densities in the neighborhood between 19.9 to 30.85. And you were saying that the development that's proposed is consistent. Do you know what the density is proposed here?
It's 27.88 units per acre, and it ranged from the two-family to 19.91 on Block 507, Lot 3, to 34.85 units per acre for the six-family on Block 506, Lot 37.
Okay.
And the average for all these lots in the area was 25.03 that I mentioned, that the similar-sized lots.
Okay. You would provide testimony on the width of the parking spaces at 8.5 feet. If they were to be compliant at 9 feet, there would be an additional 3 feet of extra width required in that back parking area as a result of the 6 spaces at a half a foot per space. Would that fit in this condition, or is it being, you're providing the point that they operate sufficiently and efficiently in as far as their arrangement, because of what reason? Because they're residential?
Well, generally speaking, I mean, parking spaces for a residential site improvement standard are 9 by 18 spaces. Sometimes in shopping centers, we'll see slightly larger, maybe 10 by 20. And traditionally, that's to do from the high volume of activity that occurs and the higher potential for doors to be dinged, because doors are opening throughout the day. Here, I believe the site engineer demonstrate that, cars will generally fit. Maybe a very large, oversized truck will have some issue, but but overall, it's not uncommon for ordinances in some form to allow, at a minimum, some form of compact spaces. And compact spaces would be considered even smaller than this, and they're maybe reserved for compact cars. But we were trying to balance, my understanding, I'm not the site designer, but we were trying to balance the providing the buffer and parking. And I really deferred to the project designers, but it was our understanding that that could still operate sufficiently for a site like this due to the low amount of movement of those vehicles in and out.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, further questions from the board?
I don't have a question, but I have a compliment. I've been doing this a number of years, and I just want to say that combination of planning testimony and question of our planning, this was fantastic. Covered so many important issues. I want to compliment both of you.
Question?
One quick question. Can you confirm that there's no parking allowed types of projects in the front yard of a lot, is that true?
You got me
So
there.
your only option, if you were to put a commercial use here, would be in the back, is that correct?
I don't know that. I don't know.
I can confirm that, but I can get back to you.
Okay.
I don't want to I don't want to, I don't know.
Can I have a clarification on, you've mentioned the lots. Are they already separated now? 4 and
No.
5?
They're under common ownership, so they merge under law effectively over the years. There are some tax cards that show two. There's been a consolidation under some other city data, so there's a doctrine that says when you have lots that are commingled in use and under common ownership, they merge. It's called the Lochner Doctrine. Over the years, under the commonality of ownership, these two lots have become one.
Okay.
So they would have to be subdivided as part of this application, which was our discussion at the last meeting, that there would have to be easements between the two lots. If at one point the owner didn't own both of them, you would still need that commonality of access with the drive, things like that.
I remember the testimony on the easements. How much of a buffer is planned in the green space on exhibit that was presented by the architect? I think it's A4. What is that buffer? That's the dimension of that.
It was 5 feet. Has that remained on there? It was, okay. I'm confirming, it was previously 5 feet, and then the exhibit shown tonight, he's nodding his head, is continuing to show that 5 feet.
Is there a reason you can't pick up some square footage or dimensions there to offset this 8.5 foot width for the parking?
That'd be a question for our engineer. I'm glad to recall Mr. Ferranti once we get done with Paul Ricky's cross, but.
And then
I
what's,
mean, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, it is just for efficiency purposes.
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti was sworn in, he's qualified, he's still sworn in. Would you mind if he
Yeah,
simply?
but he has to come forward and
You wanna
find a
make quick answer,
microphone.
John, to Mr. Vasquez?
the question is, right now you're proposing, what was testified as a 5 foot, what appears to be a green buffer between the parking lot and the neighboring properties. Is there any reason you can't pick up the 3 feet that we're missing for this, to make 8.5 to 9 feet to get rid of that variance?
So get a half a foot for each space on either side to pick up that 3 foot dimension.
If I understand the question
Give him a
correctly.
microphone
need a
before
mic.
he starts.
There's one on the table right.
And just for clarification, it's really just on the back, because you're picking up width, not depth, because 18 feet's the requirement, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's been testimony to that extent.
No, in the back parking lot, all the way to the back, yes.
Well, for us to be able to pick up additional buffer there, we would have to lose parking.
No, we're saying.
No, the other way.
Widen the parking stalls. Try to get to 9 feet on parking.
Oh,
What would that do to the buffer?
well, we reduce the buffer with 6 feet, 3 feet. We will reduce it to 2 feet.
And
Right, from a design point of view, what would that still be compatible with
Yes,
creating a
in
barrier
essence, I just
to
want to
protect you
remind
from the other yards?
We're proposing a board-on-board fence or solid fence, 6
Right.
foot high. Correct. Obviously, we had shrubbery with the reduction. It would just be green space and not be able to plant any shrubbery. It would be wide enough. Our neighboring lot also had fences, as was testified as well. So we could make it 9 feet, but we'd have to lose that buffer.
So I think you need 2 witnesses to answer this question, Mr. Feskin. You heard that dimension out from the engineer. Now, Paul, from a planning perspective.
That was going to be my next
If we were
question.
If we were to limit that buffer and downward adjust it by 3 feet, so it's only a 2 foot buffer, as a planner, now we have 9 foot parking stalls.
I personally wouldn't be objectionable. Well, you couldn't plant, you could maybe, if you wanted to, you can plant some vines or something to provide a green look to it. Because I don't think there's an issue with the adjoining lot with headlights. The buffer is not really.
What is, I must have missed it, but what is 50723?
That is the
22, rather.
school part, 22?
Yeah, that's the one that
I-
abuts you.
Yeah. And just so you know, 22 is located also it's in the business zone. It's not actually located in a residential zone. So we're not required to buffer there because it's located in
I
a
want to know
residential.
what it is.
I believe it's part of the car dealership lot.
I think it's more of the VW parking.
Yeah.
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 It looks like it.
Yep. It's owned by the VW folks,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Douglas Motors?
Sure.
Correct.
Okay.
Jay, what about a mix of 9-foot and 8.5-foot? So you have a planting zone, but you get more full-size spaces.
Which the code contemplates, that divided percentage of the compact versus the full size as well.
Yeah, I think the other question here is, which we there was testimony and questions about it, I think at the first meeting, or the last meeting, I should say, was about snow plowing and removal. And if there are shrubs there as it is, there might be getting destroyed by snow plows. So when you look at it, I'm open to either one. I just think it's an option to reduce, and frankly, as a person who sees the cars around town, they're only getting bigger.
They're not
You-
small.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, and if you're looking for the luxury, whether or not you get a Suburban, I don't know, but I'm not seeing people with subcompacts renting a luxury unit.
No, that's fair.
If we increased it, that wouldn't bump us up over lot coverage requirements, would it?
Doesn't look
I
like it.
don't, I think John, would we be okay on impervious coverage if we did?
Yes.
We're still fine, yeah.
We're still fine.
You're permitted as much as 90%, and
Yep.
they're at 75 on each lot.
Yeah, so we'll be talking a 3-foot dimension over the width, it's relatively nominal.
Well, if those plants have a minimal chance of survival, and you're proposing some greening of the fence, and then you can eliminate that variance by getting all 9-foot zero spaces, I think.
We have the room and we're glad to do it.
All right,
Okay,
great.
yeah.
That sounds good.
Other questions?
I just have a
I've got
couple.
one, and it probably makes no sense to ask it, but I will anyway. In this B zone, what percentage of the B zone actually does what we want it to do?
By lots or by area?
Take your pick.
Well, by lots, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that have residential on the ground floor. And because the B zone extends off of this aerial, I can tell you to maybe Butler Parkway, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 lots that are strictly commercial. Question is, car dealerships are permitted, office permitted, liquor stores permitted. It's about 50-50 in terms of lots. Area, the commercial lots are much larger, so from that perspective, there's a greater degree of conformity, but as you see in the planning pattern, this is a very unique situation occurring.
I think this zoning changed like maybe 20 years ago to business zone.
Is that,
Yeah, maybe a little bit
My
longer.
question is kind of where I'm coming from is, why are we asking, I mean, you're asking to do this, but why are we violating our zoning? Has anybody looked into the building that's there to see whether or not a commercial property could be put on the first floor? And then you certainly could design the new building to do that.
Well, I think they testified to the impracticality of.
I'd like to hear it from them.
That's exactly what it was. There was testimony as to, there's no viability for commercial. Commercial's often very dark.
Well, I don't think we're allowed to talk about economics, are we?
No, dark as in, you won't rent the space. It won't, that's not an economic situation. That's a futility.
If you can't rent it, it's economic.
That's a dormant property, and then you've got a parking issue, and then you've got a drive aisle. It's an over-intensification of use of the property. I think that was a decent part of Mr. Ricky's direct testimony.
you would be evicting a tenant that exists there today on the ground floor of the building, right? That's providing a needed type of housing as well. And what we're proposing is, we think is the best fit for this area. It's what the area is. And again, I was asked, responding to your planner, I mean, you're gonna really need to use both lots for having any realistic intended, any type of real commercial activity. You can see the other lots that are commercial in the area, how much larger that they are. And the site is just small and just better suited for residential, simply put.
other questions?
Chairman, I got a couple.
Go ahead.
Where the oratory school parking lot is that underlying zoning still residential?
Yes, it's in the R10 district.
Okay. And then I'm a little confused. The architect mentioned that these units were going to be luxury units, and then you referred to them as possibly being workforce units.
Well, I believe, I don't know the finishes that the architect is proposing. But when you look at my knowledge of Summit, and years ago, I worked at Higher Gruel. I actually did some work in town as a young planner. My understanding of Summit and the state in general, when you have a community that has a train station, and you have homes up the hill that are, as expensive as they come. And, there's some areas that have smaller homes and the like, and regular homes, the traditional homes, I understand that. But in what I see, and I review a lot of development applications as a planner, is that most development that you see is for, larger single-family homes that are very expensive. It could be a one-lot subdivision in town. And then around transit, right, those transit apartments, I don't know what they're leasing for here in Summit, but I would imagine $4,000 and up. We're not talking about finances. And then because the state is requiring us to provide, most communities are providing the low to moderate income housing because they're mandated by the state. I guess some communities may be providing it otherwise. So the focus is on providing low and moderate income housing. And low and moderate income housing is, low is 60 to 80%, and then 80 to 100% is moderate, and then very low is beneath that. So what I was trying to say is that where there's very little the type of housing being built is what I call this workforce housing. 1,000 square foot apartment, it's still gonna command a decent rent here in Summit, but it's gonna be something that's more likely for like a general worker that's able to afford in comparison to a new single-family or a single-family home, a transit-oriented apartment next to the train, and then they're not gonna qualify for the low and moderate income housing. So there's a very strong need for this type of housing, and it's traditionally not getting built, in my opinion, at the capacities that's needed for everyday people.
And then I'm not sure quite how to ask this question, so I'm just going to kind of wing it. So bear with me for a second. In your opinion, are you comfortable with the access to this structure without a second means of egress and the closeness of the buildings on the east side and the lack of access from the rear side for emergency services?
All I can suggest as a planner, I'm not an expert in fire. I do know that we have building codes that have to be adhered to. And that I'm nowhere near an expert in this, but most buildings that I see aren't fully sprinkled buildings. So I thought that was a strong asset to this site.
I agree.
Other than that, traditionally, these are building code requirements. And if we can't adhere to the building code, then we have no application.
Of course,
build it,
yeah, of course, yep, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else, questions for this witness? Anyone from the public have a question for this witness? Seeing none?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. That concludes our prosecution of this application, Mr. Chairman, members. I'll briefly sum up what we conceded to tonight, where we landed, and our case. Now, I don't want to belabor the point. We've heard it several times since the start of the application, in November. You heard it in our intro tonight, about an hour and a half ago, a little less maybe. This is a largely conforming proposal. What do I mean by that? I mean, the structure, the use is allowed. Multifamily residential is permitted here. The structure sites on this lot as proposed to be subdivided without Any deviations from the applicable code standard, they don't all apply to B-zone, but those that do are fully conforming. Of note are height and FAR. Those are two other D variances that could be at play here and there or not. There's no density issue. Our proposed dwelling unit per acreage is right in that sweet spot of the average of the 8 properties around us that have multifamilies. It is not on the high end, it is not on the low end, it is right in the middle, off by about 1% from that exact median. The proposal is a very well-appointed looking structure. It is designed in a very smart way by Mr. Forbes, very good architect. Mr. Forbes actually designed a house for me out of state. He's a fantastic architect. This is missing and lacking nothing. The site engineering is there. It's a significantly improved condition over what you have today under existing, and that also ties into the existing structure, the aesthetic improvements that the existing structure will have as part of the undertaking of this very large, significant overhaul by the applicant, who owns a number of properties within the city, proudly owns a number of them within the city, and is looking to improve this existing one as a companion to this project, should it be approved. We've had some, I think, important conditions offered by the applicant. Of note tonight is the parking can be enhanced to a compliant 9x18 dimension for the parking spaces for all of them. Parking, again, is compliant with the code standards. The shortfall was the 8.5-foot dimension for the entirety of them. A portion are allowed to be 8.5. Now all of them will be 9. I think it's a very good point several board members made, which is that the minute a plow comes in, they might destroy those shrubs anyway, that 5-foot buffer area or the like. They may not thrive even if not destroyed by a plow. But we think that that's a nice improvement the applicant can accommodate. The drive is plenty wide for that access. It will work. And the walkways that are now proposed on these sides are a nice way in and out of the property should someone want to get street side from the parking lot walking, bringing the refuse containers up for the city workers and the recycling containers up by the property owner. By the way, the applicant currently has a super who lives on the street in another property. Part of that super's primary tasks includes bringing the recyclables street side on recycle day. That will be the case for the proposed structure as well. I know there was a question asked earlier we didn't get to. It's not a huge question, but it's one I wanted to answer for you folks. All that said, it's a smart development. I think Mr. Forbes said it very well when he said, this works here, this is in keeping with the surrounding area, and he took inspiration from the other structures in the area, both by massing and the appearance. And when you saw that rendering that we marked earlier tonight, it fits. There's no sore thumb here. The sore thumb is today. It's the void, it's the open, vacant lot that is just sitting there idle, doing nothing. We think this is smart, adaptive reuse of that idle land, Mr. Chairman, members. This application's been pending for a very long time. It went through several iterations of revision, not overhauls, but enhancements and tweaks along the way. This culminates about a year, if not more, of the applicant having a matter before this board in one fashion or another from the date of filing to the day we're here. So I want the board to know that this was not a back of a napkin endeavor for the applicant. I don't think you assume it was with the testimony you heard of the experts that were retained. But this was a significant undertaking by the applicant with a lot of thought and a lot of reactive thought after hearing the board's concerns, both at the primary meeting as well as the tech meetings we had earlier with your staff on a few Zoom calls. So I think you're getting a smart product here that's mindful of what the city deserves, that's mindful of the city code, and is also balanced against the reality of, to develop this lot, there are going to be some physical shortcomings, and we've discussed them tonight. With that, I want to thank the board for hanging in with us for the entirety of this application. I know it's getting a little bit late tonight, it's a Monday, so with that, I will stop, and I will just thank you both, board members and your staff again for all of your time on this application.
Okay, this is the second opportunity for the public. If anyone from the public would like to tell us what they think of this application, now is the time to do that. Seeing no one moving towards a microphone, we will turn to our attorney to give us the conditions and the number of votes required.
Yep. So I have, looks like 5 conditions noted here. The one, I question whether it's still applicable. First, we have the compliance with the conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. Second is that the applicant shall submit a landscaping plan to the city forester for review and approval. Third, and this is the one I was talking about, it was discussed at the last meeting, the potential that no fencing shall be installed along the building or in the front yard. Is that still Since the plans were revised, is that still a condition that applies here?
That's fine, we talked about breaking the plane of the front yard of the structure to the street side, no fencing there. Yeah, I think that was a request of a board member or two, we're certainly still fine with that condition.
Okay. Fourth, the cross-access easement shall be submitted to the board attorney for review and approval. The easement shall be recorded prior to the issuance of a building permit. And the fifth and final condition that I have noted is that the applicants shall revise their plans to provide for 9-foot wide parking spaces rather than the original 9-foot wide parking spaces rather than the 8.5-foot spaces.
And I caught one more, I don't know if it's still applicable, Ed, but you wanted to see as part of resident compliance, the detail of the railing to that second story of the existing structure.
Right.
We're glad to send that.
And you can submit that as well as a detail for the trash enclosure?
Yeah.
Right, correct. Thank you.
And should that last condition address what was gonna be done, like the landscaping in the back, what the impact of that was gonna be?
Well, we have a landscaping plan being submitted to the city forester anyway, so that will be encompassed there.
But he's gonna need to know that we've agreed to change
We'll
the
make a
width of
note.
that thing.
We'll make a note in the landscaping condition that'll reflect the now 2-foot buffer as opposed to the original
Right.
3-foot.
Chairman Steiner, can I ask a question about conditions?
You can ask anything you want.
With the applicant's.
To our attorney, you can.
With the applicant's permission, could we add another requirement that we get some sort of approval or review by the fire department? I know we've done it in the past. Is it too late now? I mean, it probably did it in technical review, but
So, yes, we could have a condition that the plans, final revised plans be submitted to the fire department for review and approval. We wouldn't condition it prior to the issuance of the resolution or anything, but just a general condition that they ultimately get that sign off.
I guess their October one had comments.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I have the October one. I've
Okay.
got to go through it and find it, but the October 2023 set of reports.
Okay,
The cover sheet says paper report attached with
okay.
comments.
Then
I
The
don't
building
know whether or
department's
not-
gonna review and check it against the fire code, right?
I don't
So-
know.
They should. Okay.
Eric Everett, oh, God.
Build-
No,
build
minimum
according to
driveway
plans.
width 20 feet. That was the one comment made.
So do we want anything further with fire department, or are we okay with building department
I
review?
mean, we know that they looked at it, we
Okay.
know that they did some, they didn't, and we know that there was a technical review committee meeting.
Yep, yep.
At which point I would assume that there would be comments.
So I will remove my
Got it.
request. I didn't see the October, so I
Sorry.
apologize.
Mr. Chairman?
I looked, there it was.
Ed's got a comment.
Ed, yes.
Just a quick question. At one point, it was offered about a yield sign, I believe it was, on the driveway for cars exiting compared to cars entering. Is that correct?
Didn't we turn it around or something?
Yeah, it was something so it would stop cars from exiting the parking lot,
Right.
yielding to the people coming in the driveway. Is that-
I assume
Was
that's
that on the,
It was on the plan, I think it was oriented.
was that on the
wrong way.
A4 plan?
And you agreed to change
It was on
the,
the original plan set, but it was oriented the wrong way, but it'll be incorporated whether or not that exhibit said or not. That's no problem.
but I
Thank
think
you.
that was
It helps
part-
us
that's
to
what
review the
might
plans.
be done. Put it in, it can't hurt.
Yep.
Okay, and the number of votes.
It does include D variances, including D1, so 5 votes are required to approve.
Okay.
Well, can I clarify that? Because the D1 is for the new building, but isn't the
The-
D2 for the
The
existing?
D2 is for the existing nonconformity expansion, as they're reducing the lot size. D1 is for the newly proposed building, which does not include commercial on the first floor.
And both of those are 5s, right?
Yes.
Okay. Who would like to begin our deliberations? Ms. Chifo, you're up.
I feel like this application has gone from like one extreme to another, and a lot of revisions in terms of this building being set back, the new building structure being set back on the street. The design has a major improvement, so I think we've progressed very well going up to this point, and, even just taking adding the sidewalks along the side of the buildings was one of my concerns. And I understand why the new structure, the entrance is in the back, closer to the, for the second floor and third floor unit, that's closer to the parking, although the initial structure, it's the entrance in the front. So I understand that. So I'm very pleased with the look, and I think a lot of our issues have been addressed, the parking situation is addressed, so I can support this.
Okay.
Tom, you want to go?
Tom, you're up.
Okay.
I like going side to side
Okay.
anyway.
I'm in favor of this application as well. I think the scale is appropriate for the neighborhood. I think, those of us who've looked there or drive by it multiple times a week, we, probably know the neighborhood very well. So the scale is appropriate for the neighborhood. I think it's important to fill in that gap, that lot that has nothing on it. I do appreciate the improvements in the pedestrian access to the rear of the property. Those sidewalks are very useful. The side triangle work is also helpful to ensure safety driving out. The D1 use variance, I guess that's really the main issue in this application, because it is, it's a significant variance, and it's something, obviously, the ordinance wants us to have business on the first floor there. But as has been noted by the planner and by those of us who drive by there a lot, that particular section of that neighborhood is mostly buildings with residential on the first floor, including the second lot on this property. And as also been noted, it helps satisfy the need for housing units. As I think I mentioned earlier, the planner made very convincing arguments on the proofs for the D1 use variances and the buffer waivers that they're asking for, the applicant's asking for. So having said all of that, I can support the application.
Yeah. Okay, if we're going to go back and forth, yes. I've been really excited about this one. Certainly, I think that the D1 variance is very appropriate here. Of the businesses in the neighborhood, there is nothing anyone would traditionally walk to except perhaps the liquor store. And as the planner testified, this is not a lot that driving to a business makes any sense. There's not adequate commercial parking on the lot. The street parking is problematic. If they did have, say, a restaurant on the first floor, all the next door neighbors who live on the first floor of their buildings would not be happy about it. So this is not like downtown Summit. I think residential use is totally appropriate. And boy, we need more housing that isn't $3.5 million a unit. So I'm very happy to support this one.
So at first blush, I look at this saying, is it really 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag? And as we go through this process, it's very clear that that's not the case. This, the architect talked about how this is in harmony, and it's almost like step from one next to another. And I see this as it fits, it makes sense, it's conforming with what's existing neighbors on both sides. And the fact that we have, so the D variance makes absolute sense. We're solidifying the fact that there's a grandfathered use next door, but then the buffer backyard, it's a parking lot. It's not a residential house. So when I look at all of these things, going through the facts and the testimonies, and Mr. Yuko made the comment, I think the back and forth of the planners, it was about as clear as you could possibly get. With that, I have absolutely no problem supporting this.
Yeah, I'll second Mr. Feskin's comments. One of the things that everything fell into place with this application. In the business zone, you're allowed to go right up to the boundaries of the property. One of my concerns from history of my own with my own personal stuff is that sometimes we have commercial businesses right up to residential properties. And that drives me crazy. None of that happens here. I did ask about the parking lot behind the property, which is still zoned residential, but hopefully that never changes. But everything fell into place here. So originally, 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag was my thought, but listening to everything here, everything fell into place, and I can certainly support this application.
Anyone, Paul?
I can support this. I think it does fit. And, you know, driving by, you see a big open space. And it's consistent with a lot of the properties that are already on that street. And I can support it.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Well,
I'm doing everybody.
I guess we all get a chance. So our job is to evaluate the positive and negative criteria. And I absolutely agree with Mr. Yukio that the planner tonight, his thorough testimony, absolutely highlighted the positive criteria for this site. And I think if you combine that with the compelling testimony regarding the absolute impracticality of having any kind of commercial on this site, forget about the fact that what are you gonna do with a 1,000-square-foot store, the inability to park it in any way, shape, or form. If you take that and then marry it to, which is really high design, completely appropriate to the neighborhood, and just, I think, maximizing the opportunity of the site and taking an eyesore and turning it to a net positive for the neighborhood. So with that, I can support this application.
Okay. I wish this had counted as 6 units instead of 3. Because if it did, we'd have some issues with affordable housing and how it would be done. But we can't do that for some reason. I think everybody has expressed all of the reasons we should do it. And for that reason, I would accept a motion to approve this application.
Moved. Okay, I'll second.
May we have a roll call?
Vice Chairman Loikett?
Yes.
Mr. Yuko?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Chico?
Yes.
Mr. Feskins?
Yes.
Chairman Steiner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much, folks. We
And
appreciate
we
it.
have one set of minutes for memorialization. If we do it quickly,
Yeah, we could do it really quickly.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
hang on, let us
I'm
finish
sorry,
our business
just-
here.
Can I have the exhibits, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, and the minutes are for Tuesday, November 19th, and they are 7 pages long. They're getting a little shorter.
So it would be 2 and 3.
And is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved?
Okay.
Second.
Voice, okay, is there a second? Yes. Is there a voice vote? Yes, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion to approve the minutes has carried. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
Second? Third? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.